and welcome to the show. And yes, the big bang Reliance Industries AGM speech has just concluded, and there are so many important highlights really coming in from that particular company and from Mukesh Dhirubhai Ambani's speech. But first, the key point, he did commemorate his 2 decades of leadership at the helm of Reliance Industries, and at that event, he also gave a sneak peek into the future leaders and the generation next of Reliance Industries going forward. Remember that the first step was already taken with Akash Ambani joining the board and becoming the chairman of Reliance Jio Infocom very recently, and the other 2 leaders, Isha Ambani working on Reliance Retail and Anant Ambani formally also announced on the new energy business. This is one of the very big important events coming in as a sneak peek into the succession planning. But when it comes to some of the important businesses, a new O2C investment cycle is definitely a surprise for the market, because it looked like that the new energy business $10 billion announcement that came in last year would be the main focus. But O2C business investment is a very important one. And apart from that, many other big events that we are going to delve into. Let me welcome on the show Manish Chokhani, who's the director of ENAM Holdings, joining us. Manish, we're joined by my colleague Prashant Nair as well as Sonia Shenoy in the studio. My first question to you, in terms of the flavor and the founder mindset, as well as the sneak peek into the succession planning of the next gen of Reliance Industries, what is your view, being somebody who has closely tracked and worked with this particular conglomerate?
Thanks, Nisha, for having me on. As you rightly said, see, Reliance is the bellwether for India. It's our largest company. The largest profit pool in India comes from Reliance. The amount of cash they generate, that gives you really a signal of where they see the whole country and the economy heading. And in effect, they are the ones who are being at the forefront of leading it to the next, next orbits. As he's already announced in the past, the 5G investments already are going to again kickstart a new cycle for the telecom business. Retail is doing great. You rightly pointed out today they've kickstarted even the $10 billion investment back into oil to chemicals business, which, following what happened in Ukraine, I think the whole world has kind of taken a step back and said, maybe we need to push back the ESG goals a lot more, and we need to be a lot more self-sufficient. So that's certainly happening. The new energy investment of $10 billion.
Oops, I think there's some issue with that video. We'll go back to Manish Chokhani in a bit, but we also want to focus a little more on what they're doing in the telecom business, because definitely telecom is entering the next phase of growth. As the management pointed out, they will be investing 2 lakh crores for the rollout of the 5G network, and they've given a very firm timeline. By Diwali this year is when Jio will launch the largest 5G network. They'll of course have pan-India 5G coverage by the end of 2023, so quick rollouts happening over there. And there will be a large investment of 2 lakh crores for Jio's 5G rollout. So, of course, we'll try and get back to Manish Chokhani in a bit. But that is the telecom, rollout that they've spoken about. Apart from that, very interesting, they will be launching the FMCG business this year as well. And retail is a big focus area for them, within which the FMCG business features. They will be investing 75,000 crores in the oil to chemical business over the next 5 years. So, at the end of the day, across all businesses, they've spoken about the next phase of growth, and hence they're aiming to double their value by 2027.
On the 5G thing, what got my attention was that you checked the devices which they showcased, right? There was the air fiber thing, which I think is a great thing. And the other one is, the PC, the computer, the cloud PC, the Jio Cloud PC, I think is what it's called. Which of course also sort of the aim is that it replaces desktops, etc. They said they're already doing it, in their offices, Reliance offices, and widespread adoption is essentially the aim. Manish is with us. Manish, we lost you there. Please go on. Please complete that point. Essentially, what is the takeaway for you from this AGM? What should we really take away?
Prashant, I think the big news is the continued confidence in India and the bet being taken. And so many different vectors along which Reliance is growing, and also presaging, because that will take a lot of downstream investments from others as well. So it's in a way that whole capex cycle that one was waiting for to get kick-started. You're seeing it coming across from everyone. And no one better than Reliance, which is our largest company with the largest cash flows, to actually show us the way forward. So, personally, it's a great sign for the country.
Okay. Manish, hi. Welcome to the show. On the telecom rollout, I mean, they've given some firm timelines. There's a big investment of 2 lakh crores. So clearly they're gunning for, in any case, the telecom business has now virtually become a 2-player market and they're gunning for further market share there. How do you think that will impact the overall business? Do you see more value in the stock now because of what's happening with the telecom business?
Sonia, there's always value in Reliance at every point because it's a company which is constantly growing and constantly changing its orbit. And as you rightly said, even on 5G, if you saw the recent bids which were made, they were more than 2 times the amount that bandwidth taken by Reliance as compared to even Airtel. And the areas in which they are seeking to use it will range from education and healthcare to industry to sports to just the whole gamut. And it effectively gives you broadband through the air as opposed to the geo fiber which you have to take into your homes. So it just kickstarts everything. I heard you all briefly talking about the virtual PC, which in a way, every businessman and every small, trader in India can effectively have their own machine and run everything on that. And for the Internet of Things to actually come into existence, this is the basic backbone which you will need to run all of that. So I think it just changes another dimension to the telecom business and makes it really virtually how best to say it is the airborne kind of infrastructure of India in a sense has been laid out. Much as we survived, during COVID period, thanks only to the network which was there. I think this is just setting the stage for the next leap forward. And the fact that they've created the technology indigenously in India, not being reliant on Huawei and so on, although there is a Qualcomm partnership there, is all exciting stuff.
That's right, Manish. Now, when we look at the large conglomerates in India, and Manish, many have grown now over the years. Now, with the thrust that is given in terms of the balancing act also in the energy business, and you briefly spoke about the Ukraine crisis also having an impact. What do you make of the balance at Reliance Industries in terms of giving the clear targets of the $10 billion investment in the solar energy, where the new information is 2 gigawatts of solar energy capacity by 2025? And on the other hand, also to see business in reinvestment has been kickstarted now till 2026, $10 billion. And Reliance Industries' renewable energy consumption has jumped up by 350% in last 1 year, on track to its net zero emission target by 2035.
So, Nisha, if you think of it, Reliance does a post-tax profit of 10 billion, and they do almost a $15 billion cash flow annually. And if you think of investment cycles spread over 4 years, that's $60 billion in a way of equity, which is available to invest. And assume they run on their, erstwhile mantra of 0.5 debt equity. You have a $90 billion kind of outlay, which is possible over the next 4 years. And which all these announcements are really pointing you in that direction. And like he rightly always says, say the new energy investment or the solar investment, this is not the end point. They're putting down the first level $10 billion investments, see how it goes, and then nothing stops you from scaling it, 3x, 4x, 5x from there. And you will surely be growing your cash flow stream over the next 4 or 5 years as well. So all I'm saying is he's laid down the tracks on which you want to grow, which, telecom was one, new energy was the second, the erstwhile oil to chemicals business is the third, retail, of course, is now, fairly self-sustaining. So you have all these vectors on which they're able to grow, and they're showing you they have ability to reinvest capital, to produce an incremental return on capital employed, to continue to remain at a leadership position in the Indian market. So, I mean, really, that's really the basic takeaway over.
Manish, what also stood out was the emphasis on technology partners, right? I mean, straight out acquisitions, but also sort of working with the best in respective fields around the world, because some of these businesses are cutting edge and technology develops, and you got to be with it, and that augurs well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So, Prashant, you would have, we've all spoken a lot about what happened in the world post certainly the Ukraine war, where people realize you need to have onshoring of businesses. You need to, restock all the, inventory which you may or may not be able to get because of disrupted supply chains. And you may be held hostage due to technology and platforms. And Reliance, in a way, had already thought of this year. You see, everything they do, they try and indigenize the technology or, in a way, take ownership of the technology. So even what happened in telecom earlier with the investments with Facebook and with Google and with now, of course, with Qualcomm and the others, is basically saying we want to really embed this technology development into India for the next phase of growth for the economy, where we can't remain technology dependent on other countries. And we have to create solutions which are right for our country. So I think they're just doing a phenomenal job. And if not them, who else is going to do this at the scale at which they are? And India remains really the last big market for the world. And when you want to partner with someone like Reliance, naturally the terms are tilted in favor of Reliance. What I didn't hear, of course, this year in the AGM was their global aims of internationalizing the business, which, during the course of the year, you heard about them putting a bid for Boots and others like that. And maybe that's also one leg which is going to come out as they build their brand and try and take the company global as well.
So that takes
technology
us to...
and branding both, I guess, will become two more fulcrums for this great company.
Sure. That brings us to the retail piece, right, which is growing at such a fast pace. I mean, despite a very challenging year, FY22, they saw, what, 25 to 30% growth in their retail business, and now they're launching their FMCG business this year as well. In any case, in the last AGM, Mukesh Ambani had said that the retail business will triple in the next 3 to 5 years. From a shareholder perspective or a long-term investor perspective, how important is this piece?
So 65% of India is consumption. And within that, organized retail is still a very, very small part. So, while they've reached 2 lakh crore, it's kind of one milestone along a journey, which is going to be far, far larger. And even the launch of FMCG within retail is kind of a natural outcome, because when you have the customers, their likes, you start creating these private labels. So you start eliminating the marketing and advertising kind of dollars which are being wasted in a way. So again, if you look at this as a journey of creating, say, a Walmart inside, it's a long, long journey ahead of you. And this will become, because it's a consumer-facing business, a very, very large piece. And of course, the market's been waiting for long for a spin-off and a IPO from the retail piece as well, like we've been waiting for what happens to the whole telecom piece. So this too shall happen.
Right. In fact, Manisha, that 5-year timeline was given in 2019 AGM by Mukesh Ambani, and next 2 years are going to be quite eventful on that front. Many investors are also waiting for capitalization of their investments in that as well. But Manisha, new segment, I would say, where Reliance Industries has shown a lot of thrust in the recent announcement is also the media space. Now, this is also an important piece in their whole digitization bouquet that they present. Yeah. While Mukesh Ambani was talking about the fiber fixed broadband adoption, and India being amongst the top 10 in the world, and Jio trying to enable it. On the other hand, he also spoke about Viacom 18 and the OTT movies concentration, and also the IPL gamut, which could be much more exciting to the viewer with the new tech stack that they showcased. What's your view on this space and, end-to-end solution when it comes to the digital space, and also making money on the consumption side from the media angle?
So, Nisha, if you all keep calling it a telecom business, and at least I don't think of what Reliance has as a telecom business. Because the telecom business per se was a dumb pipe, and you're selling minutes, in a way, to use the language that Bharti uses, that you're a minute factory and you want to sell the airtime. But what Reliance is attempting is to go beyond, to add value to that airtime. So, like I said, you will find something in sports, you will find something in movies, you will find something on healthcare, you'll find education, you'll find people running their businesses, because that's really the value-added data which goes into this fat pipes that they have built of capacity, first with 4G and now, of course, with 5G. And the acceleration that you get because of these capacities creates velocity in the economy. And that velocity, then, you're the toll bridge which collects something each time something is moving inside over there. So they've certainly built an ecosystem thinking, 360 degrees. And it's not the sort of traditional way one looks at a pure telecom company as, how many minutes and how much capacity and so on and so forth, because there is a lot more value addition that can be done there. Also mix it up with your retail piece where transactions will happen here. There hopefully will be a financial services piece as well. And I mean, everything which happens really in the ecosystem is happening on these new highways, the sort of new traffic signals that they're putting out, the new shops they're building. So think of it as really the metaverse in a way has already arrived in India much before, what Facebook is trying to build in the rest of the world. And I hope I'm not exaggerating when I say it, but certainly I see it in that manner. That they are building the guardrails and the infrastructure for the future.
Manish, what did you make of the responsibilities with respect to the next gen? When we talk about Reliance, we talk very large numbers in terms of expansion, as you said, separate tracks in terms of where they want to go being put out. But at the core, right at the top, I mean, the management is also extremely seasoned, right? I mean, the core top management team in that respect.
No, absolutely, Prashant, that you don't run organizations of this size and this kind of excellence, without a very, very solid caliber of people there. And I know for years, Mukesh Bhai has always been lowering the average age. And he thinks in terms of giving responsibility to executives, in their early 40s. Because that's really your golden decade when, you have the expertise and the vision and the, detail. And as far as it comes to, obviously the next generation of Reliance, he's also streamlined and said that, Akash will look at telecom. I mean, the way it's defined. Isha has obviously been leading retail, and Anant now will, be looking at new energy and so on. But all this, remember, is to be preparing them for non-executive board roles, where executives will be running the business, but they couldn't have just been transported at the top, not knowing what is happening at the ground level. So they're certainly been inside the business, earning their spurs, knowing the nitty-gritties, so no one can take them for a ride in the future. And as this company will be, multiple times of what it is, they will in a sense co-creators of these new businesses, very much like the previous generation had worked alongside the late Dhirubhai, building out, what was the then great oil to chemicals company.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that they're doing it in a very, very professional and a correct way.
Absolutely. And, a clear discussion on the succession roadmap is critical, right, for not just for Reliance Industries, lakhs of investors, but for several corporates. I mean, it's a green flag, safeguards the continuity of the business as well. Manish, a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks a lot for joining in. We have Balaji Subramanian, the Vice President of IIFL Securities, who's also with us on the show. It was interesting, Balaji, that, Mukesh Ambani ended the AGM on a rather emotional note, saying that he has attended every single one of the last 45 AGMs since the start, right? So, and then followed it up with the whole succession plan as well. Whatever was spoken about today, does it give you more confidence in the stock? Do you think that there could be a re-rating upwards despite the kind of outperformance that the stock has already seen? Okay, I don't think my voice is reaching him. So, Balaji, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead,
I
please.
just looped in a little later than expected. So I think I missed the first part of your question. So, if you don't mind repeating, it will be good.
Sure. Just your overall takeaways, what stood out for you from this AGM, and what's your view on the stock?
So firstly, I will comment on Jio, and on Jio, what we got to know is that the 5G rollout, at least in the 4 metros, will be done by Diwali. So that's an incremental piece of information. But as of now, we don't have any details on the pricing of the pack. 5G packs, nor we have, and I think there were some expectations on some announcements regarding a 5G handset from Jio. So we didn't get to hear any of that. And the other thing to note is that the company has announced that it would have a pan-India coverage by December 2023. And they have also earmarked rupees 2 lakh crores of a capital investment. Of course, we don't know what time frame this investment would be made, but still, it's a fairly sizable amount. considering the fact that they have already put in about 90,000 crores in terms of spectrum expenditure. So I think some of those finer details are not yet known, but otherwise, at least it gave some direction on where the company is heading in terms of its 5G strategy. Where the chairman clearly articulated that Jio would focus on a standalone 5G network. And that is also a kind of, it was largely obvious because that is the sole reason why Jio went and bid for the 700 megahertz band in these auctions. So in a way, that was kind of reinforcing what was known. But otherwise, we just have this extra bit of information, and also the fact that Jio will complement its ongoing FTTH rollout with the FWA, which is the technology that you can offer over wireless, which will offer speeds and throughputs which are similar to fiber. So we also know that Jio would be focusing on FWA using 5G in the next few months.
That's right. So 5G thrust definitely, but let me go also to Devin Choksi, who's been patiently waiting. Devin, good to have you on the show. What do you make of the new investment cycle which has been kickstarted in O2C business?
Good afternoon, Nisha. Well, I think the overall growth, I think, in the entire O2C business, I think as we see in different product verticals, I think, which they talk about, including into the vinyl segment. They are basically talking about doubling the size or more than doubling the size in many cases from here on, I think next 3 to 4 years time from now. So which means that I think the continued activity in this O2C business, I think also continues, largely I think attributed to the higher amount of demand getting generated into the system because of the economy growing. So on one side, you have the new material business segment, I think, which is growing. On the other side, I think the conventional business also, I think, catching up with the demand, and the investment is going into that. Carbon fiber business in particular, I think, is basically attracting higher amount of attention now, because that's a material which is going to be the material of future, be it in automobiles or be it any other engineering products. I think this is one material which is going to have significantly larger demand. And that's where I think for the first time a clear-cut roadmap has been spelled out for investing further sum of money into the carbon fiber. So in my viewpoint, I think given the kind of roadmap of investment of around 75,000 crores over next 3 to 4 years time, we thus again suggest that I think the current O2C business, I think, which is in the vicinity of around 50-60,000 crores EBITDA, I think could possibly, I think, continue to grow in a vicinity of around 12 to 15% going forward on a sustainable basis.
Okay, 75,000 crores to begin with, and then once they see the scalability, I think Mr. Mani said that could be doubled as well. Naveen Kulkarni is also with us. Naveen, good to have you with us here. Thanks for waiting. Again, to go back to Telecom, what's the route for you?
Yes, so Telecom looks fairly interesting because Jio has already bought out a lot of spectrum for 5G services. And interestingly, the chairman put out clearly that they will be using multiple bands, including the 700 megahertz band for coverage, right? So that's a very interesting proposition that we are looking at. So we are looking at one pan-India standalone 5G technology rollout happening by December 2023 using multiple bands, and of course with the kind of throughput that we are looking at. So this is going to be, I would say, a major growth engine for Jio over next to 3 to 5 years, right? So that is very critical. So Jio, of course, has reached a certain market share in terms of subscriber base and, of course, the product penetration. But with the kind of investments that we are looking at 5G and with newer aspects coming, which is machine-to-machine communication, more and more broadband communication, I think the growth path for Jio becomes even more clearer. So I think these are good steps that the company is taking to create immense value in this part of the business.
Okay, let's get Prabal Sen into the conversation as well. Prabal, in the oil to chemical business, we are clearly entering the next leg of growth for Reliance Industries. They've announced a 75,000 crore investment over the next 5 years. Your thoughts on how this business could grow and eventually reflect in the stock as well?
Well, I think the number was definitely a surprise for us. After the kind of capex expansion that had already happened in the petchem and OTC space, and with the increasing focus on new energy businesses, I think, frankly, the impression that we had was that there would be some specialty chemicals diversifications that would happen down the line, but the initial focus would remain on the new energy businesses. But Reliance has managed to surprise with a fairly large amount of petrochemical, specifically the polyester chain capex. So to that extent, one will have to obviously see the economics of how that works out and what kind of returns they are looking for it. Yes. But yes, I mean, the OTC investment alongside, continued expansion of the green energy businesses, and of course, the very large capex that was announced for the digital services businesses, means that I think the FCF yield will probably continue to remain fairly modest, and returns, of course, are something that they have shown that they have, generated world scale EBITDA and EBIT from each of the new businesses that they have set up over the last 5 years. So, the next 5 years will also be fairly interesting to look at how they can convert these kinds of investments into, earnings growth as well, and build on top of what is already a peer-leading earnings growth trajectory for the next couple of years that is already there in the street estimates.
Right. Thanks so much, Prabal, for giving us your first thoughts on the AGM and how do you look at it. Yes, surprise on the O2C business investment. That's what came from you. But 5G rollout is what everybody's been excited about. So thank you so much, Devin, Prabal, Balaji and Naveen for joining us. And it's a wrap from my entire team on this special coverage from Sonia, Prashant and myself. Thanks so much for tuning in.